Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome back to another Femme Fatalities podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about mommy issues. And I think that Margaret has selected a tasty little tidbit for all of us to gnaw on. So why don't you pull up your coffee cup, throw in some bruja brew, curl up around the cauldron, and listen for a while. Margaret, care to enlighten us?
Yes, thank you, Anna. And hello, all you grieflings and frightlings. Today we're talking about Carrie, a coming of age tale for our poor, dear Carrie, who's so misunderstood and mistreated and bullied. On top of that, she's got a mom with major mental health issues, and she's just trying to find her voice. And yeah, she finds her voice in a bloody, revengeful way. Anything you want to add, Anna?
Carrie, I think, is a great book, great films. Really, to me, speaks very much to adolescence. And no matter what trope or archetype you fit into in your adolescence, you are going to identify with at least one of the characters throughout the book and or film.
Yes. Ooh, exactly. So, if you haven't watched Carrie, you better stop now. Go watch it because we're going to have spoilers, trigger warnings before you go watch it. There is mental and emotional abuse, there is physical abuse by partners, by teachers, by parents. So, there is a lot of abuse. So, there's a trauma warning for anybody who has grown up with a mentally ill parent or even with religious trauma. So just be mindful. There are those tones. So hit pause now, go watch the movie, and come back and listen to us.
Definitely.
So, yes.
If you are afraid of blood, this is not a movie for you either. There's some body horror as well related to how our bodies change during adolescence and what they do. And also, I would just like to mention there's a total douchebag alert throughout the entire film as well. So if you do not like people who pick on others, scum warning. Don't read or watch this, but it's definitely a good one. So if you can handle all of those different triggers or they don't cause you to feel any sort of negativity, definitely check out Carrie in one form, the other, or all of them.
Yes. Oh, and animal cruelty. You have been warned. There is a scene that involves animal cruelty. So, all right, without further ado, let's jump into Carrie, a coming of age tale for, like I said, poor sweet Carrie. It starts with Carrie starting her period in the shower, and she doesn't know what's happening. This can be a horrific experience as a woman if we have not been taught what's happening. It's very jarring. Your body hurts, it feels foreign, and you're bleeding.
It's horrifying enough if you know what's happening.
Yes.
I mean, we all can remember being in fifth grade, getting separated, and then getting the TV or the DVD player or, the laptop wheeled in, and your body is changing. Let's watch a video about it, and going, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back to class and you're looking at all of your classmates like, I know what's going to happen. So imagine not having any of that education and then boom, like, even like, whether it's a male or female adolescent, like all of those body changes that are happening, you wake up and all of these things are going on and you have no idea what they are or why. That has to be incredibly upsetting and jarring to any young person.
Oh, yes. And through junior high, high school, I think for the women listening, we all have horror tales of our period going a little bit awry, coming unexpectedly, being heavier, and then how we've dealt with it. And for men, the horror of learning about the female body and how they bleed, and that, right, a woman bleeds for 7 days. Yeah, it's not, Anna knows. I think most women know. And if you don't, it's not all blood. It's just the process of our bodies, and still that horror. I can think back of times that, oh my goodness, my body has had other plans for the day, the evening, whatever it is.
Yeah, and even, I mean, when you look at something adolescents face as well, feeling like they're in the wrong body. So your body's doing all of those things, and you feel as though it's not participating in what it should be to begin with. So that I think that can be even more distressing to a youth as well, because your body's going through all these changes. You are wanting it to perhaps morph into something that you're connected to versus what it's doing. So I think that can be very upsetting and disturbing as well. Um, and it's a lot. I think the cruelty that Carrie experiences is probably one of the most disturbing, upsetting film scenes that I've ever seen. I can actually remember being in high school. I read the book over summer because I was on a Stephen King kick. And then I was like, oh, I guess I'll just, walk over and, rent the film or whatever. And I guess I rented like the video or DVD, whatever you could rent at the time. And I'm a millennial, so, it was videos and DVDs. We got them all. And so I rented it and took it home and watched it. And I just felt so bad for Carrie. Like, it's just, she didn't know what was going on. Like, the kids in the locker room were absolutely horrible to her. And I'm just like, how could you be such a piece of garbage that you would treat another person like that? And then I'm like, well, okay, wait, I'm a teenager and, I'm certainly not nice to everyone and everyone's not nice to me. So then you really reflect on, okay, well, you can see kind of how this can happen. Maybe not to that extreme, but how cruel kids can be to each other.
Oh yeah, that beginning scene is just horrific.
Mm-hmm.
The bullying, the like, plug it up, plug it up.
Mm-hmm.
Karen doesn't even know what they're talking about. All
Yeah.
she knows is that she hurts, she's bleeding, she thinks she's dying. She turns to her peers for support. They don't support her. The gym teacher does support her, not in the most supportive way, by slapping her in
Yeah.
the face, not knowing how to deal with Carrie's hysteria.
Mm-hmm.
And then Carrie goes home to have her mom shame her, assuming that she must have sinned. She has done
Yeah.
something wrong. That's why she started her period. And going back to this touch on female hysteria, which has been a theme so often, that as
Mm-hmm.
women, we can't control our emotions and we get hysterical. So we must be slapped out of
Mm-hmm.
it, and society's inability to deal with that level of fear. Carrie thinks she's dying. She's bleeding out of her vagina. Her body is in pain. And people are teasing her. And then the gym teacher's like, well, just snap out of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no empathy for anybody in
Yeah.
Carrie's life. Nobody empathizes for her. Nobody sees her as a person.
Right. And you're absolutely right. I mean, you bring up the whole slapping. And how many times have we as individuals been around someone who's going through some sort of life change or loss or a grief experience where they are hysterical? You don't know what to do for them. You don't even know how to behave around them. And sometimes you do feel like you just want to grab this person and like shake them until they're okay. But, you can't do that. So just to segue slightly into thanatology before we get back to the rest of the book and the film, if there is someone in hysterics in front of you, you can say, what can I do to help you? You don't always have to say, calm down, get yourself calmed down, depending on your relationship. Like, we all have people in our lives that we will say, let's get some cold water on your face. Let's do some breathing exercises. Let's get calmed down. But if it's someone you don't know well, you can ask that person, what can I do for you? What do you need? What is going to help you to release this feeling and feel a little bit better? You don't have to just stand there in complete shock and not do anything, or just be like, oh, I really just want to like shake them and get them out of this. And, you can ask. It's okay to ask someone how to help them.
Thank you, Anna. That's such a vital point. Ask somebody. And even remember that our nervous system matches the nervous systems around us. So if I'm hysterical and Anna is calm and she's breathing and she's like, okay, Margaret, how can I support you? I will start to come down. I might not come all the way down, but so often when we are in terror, afraid for our lives, we're in shock, whatever it is, we need a calm person that is just there. You don't have to like breathe with me. You can just like, I'm going to be the calm person and I'm going to help this person start to come down a little bit. They might not come down, which is noticeable. So your discomfort might raise, and just remind yourself that this person is so upset. You're helping them to come back to the world. And you can even do that. Hey, I'm here. Can you look at me? Can you connect with me? Hey, ooh, let's take some, can you just breathe with me? Or let's look around. Oftentimes, if we're in terror, if we look around our space, it pulls our survival brain out of this narrow, I'm going to die. Like you can see Carrie, she grabs the first person in front of her because she's in survival brain and being like, hey, no, wait, Carrie, okay, you're in the gym, you're in the shower, nobody there was supporting her. There's like, oh, you're a freak, you don't know it's your period, the teacher can't handle it. So you get to be the person in the room that gets to control the room and not be controlled by the room.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the teachers are terrible. We've learned this, except for Mrs. Desjardins, which in the book, she's not as loving as the film portrays. Would you agree with that?
I have not read the books.
Oh, okay. So you totally need to read it.
I do. It'll be on my to-read list.
Yeah, like she's okay in the book, like, but she's definitely portrayed as more caring. Each version that comes out, like in the 70s version, it's like, oh, okay, she's sweet, and then the version that came out in 2013, I think, she's like super like helicopter, like, I'm gonna help you, it's gonna be okay. So they always make her a little bit nicer. But poor Carrie, she goes home, and for most of us that have some sort of connection with whoever raised us when we're experiencing our adolescence, we always have someone that we can go to no matter what, whether it's like mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandmother, grandfather, someone there that we can go to. So, Carrie's kind of stuck with her mother, right? Because she doesn't have any other family or anyone else around her. Yet she can't go to her because her mom's got a lot going on. And I think, Margaret, you can really comment on this very well, because you were talking to me earlier about how, like, the comparison and contrasting of how the mother is portrayed in the 1970s version and the 2013 version of the film. I think you explained it extremely well.
Thank you. And great point. So, yes, and I want to piggyback on what you brought up. So often as children, even if we don't have the healthiest of parents, we want our mother. It is primal in us. Our mothers, if you look at primates, if you look at animals, our mothers nurse us. We have this bond with them. So Carrie just wants her mother. She wants her mother to hug her. She wants her mother to tell her it's okay. Mom is mentally ill. Mom, most likely, I'm going to say, has religious trauma. We never get into the backstory of mom's religious trauma. So they allude to, yes, mom, she's traumatized and she has mental health issues. Whether her mental health is because of her trauma, that's a possibility. Or if her mental health was there and religion made that more severe for her. I really appreciate the 2013 version because it goes more into the mental health of mom. Like when Sue Snell's mom's picking up the prom dress and we see Carrie's mom, take out the sewing implement and she's stabbing herself in the leg with it, or when she starts to hit her head or even in the beginning of the 2013 one where she goes to kill her with a pair of scissors
Yeah.
and then can't, and mom instinct
Mm-hmm.
kicks in. In the 1970s version, we just kind of think mom's like a religious kook. Like we
Yeah,
really
like
don't know.
she's
Mom, yeah, she's
read
off.
this too many times and just went a little wild with it. Yeah. And it's interesting though, because the amount of abuse that we see in what 90 minutes that Carrie's receiving from her mom, like imagine her entire life up to what 16, 17, 18 years of age. She is likely being psychologically and physically abused by her mother this entire time. So the fact that up until the telekinesis and rage kick in, she's not a completely like maladjusted human being always kind of boggles my mind.
I think they allude to that she was homeschooled until she could no
Mhm.
longer be homeschooled. That also touches on mom. She's super protective. She super shelters Carrie. Mom has been Carrie's only connection
Mhm.
to the world. So now there's this codependency. I feel mom has more on Carrie than Carrie's really wanting to be a person. So yeah, her psychic abilities and her rage start to come out because Carrie just wants to be a person, and she has this mother that has been abusive. Go to your closet. That's nothing new.
Mm-mm.
That closet has been set up for Carrie to pray away her sins. That mom, talk about abuse, mom then takes the Bible, because there's times I think in both movies where Carrie's like, it doesn't even say that in the Bible, mom. You're
Yeah.
wrong. Your mom's like, no, you've
Mhm.
sinned.
Yeah. And it's wild. And I think a lot of it too, as you mentioned, we learned so much more in the newer version about mom and her psychology. The fact that to me, it seems like she's projecting her regret and her anger and whatever relationship she had with her baby daddy being Carrie's dad onto Carrie. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. Like from when I watched it, I'm like, yo, like, calm down, lady. You had sex and you had a kid. Millions of people do this. Like,
And the
there's
grief.
nothing wrong with it. Like, procreation is natural. And I really, I don't even feel like the book fully explains it. I probably need to go back and reread it in case I missed something. Listeners, if I am missing something, let me know. I'm totally open to that. Because as I said, I do need to probably reread it at some point. But the whole trope about the mother, like, what happened? Did he leave you for someone else? Did you get divorced? Was it a one night stand? Is Carrie like um was she planned and then he left, or was it like a, oh, okay, surprise pregnancy? What exactly happened? Was it the preacher at your church? Is that why you're hyper fixated on religion and everything that's evil? Like, I want to know. I want to know who you slept with. So Carrie's mom, I need to know your trope. Like, that's
Yeah.
all. I'm appealing to the horror world out there. If you have any ideas as
Well,
to
she
what may
said
have
they were
happened,
together. Like, do you
yeah.
remember that? I think it's in the 70s one. She's like, and we would look at each other. He'd look at me
Mhm.
with desire in his eyes. And so we would
Mhm.
pray and we would pray. And so they allude to there's a relationship. And he has a
Mhm.
drinking problem because then she says, he came home and I smelt the whiskey and he looked at
Mhm.
me with those eyes. So I wonder if mom didn't have some whiskey because she's so upset
Mhm.
about herself that
Yeah.
she enjoyed sex. She wanted him. She
Yeah.
enjoyed him. And therefore, that meant there was something wrong
Mhm.
with Carrie because mom enjoyed sex and she's not supposed to
Right.
enjoy sex.
Yeah. And it's just, and where is she like getting that from? Is it from the
Mm-hmm.
super religiousness? And I'm like, okay, you mentioned like he prayed with her. So I'm like, what if someone she met at church, maybe they hit the communion wine together and started hooking up? Like, you don't know. And anyone out there who's listening, if you are very religious, I don't mean to offend you. We're just tossing
Yes.
ideas out. So please don't take it for anything other than what it's worth. I'm not saying religion is a horrible thing by any means. If it is what works for you, go for it, enjoy it. use it to the best of your ability to help other people. Like, that's cool. So I'm definitely not trying to step on anyone's religious toes. We're just trying to figure out how Carrie came into this Stephen King world.
And religion can be so powerful and helpful in death and dying and grief and loss. So there's ways that religion can just be this beautiful thing, and there is a way that religion can be misused and become a form of trauma. And I think Anna's really trying to touch on that.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, Anna, I lost your picture. Oh, there you are.
I'm here.
So yes, we're just looking at like religion can be wonderful and it can also be misused. It's just like anything can be misused. So no judgment. This happens to be a movie that is looking at how religion can be misused or used to control people. It controlled Carrie's mom. Carrie's mom uses it to control Carrie. Carrie's mom in the first one also uses religion to get needs met. She goes door to door preaching to people, and then people pay her. In the second one, mom is a seamstress. I think in the first one, she's a seamstress too. However, she owns a dry cleaning business and a tailor shop. So there's a little difference there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And it's just, to me, I find it interesting that there's so much more focus on the newer one that she is a seamstress. And I'm like, at some point, like, she was a creative, talented individual. Like, and I wonder if some of her excessive behavior towards Carrie is because of like her own loss of identity. Like, I had this child, my partner's no longer in the picture, whatever happened, or, maybe there was no real partner to begin with if it was a one night stand or an assault or something like that. I mean, we can kind of rule out the assault just because, as you mentioned, like the 70s version, she was, praying with him, spending time with him or whatever. But now she's got this child to raise on her own. Probably no support from her family because nobody comes around. So we assume they're all dead or they don't want anything to do with her. And, maybe it's like, if I wouldn't have had this child and just sacrificed 16, 17 years of my life, I could have been a fashion designer. I could have been an artist. But instead, I do this. And the only thing that comforts me is turning to God. And then, like, the mental illness combined with her unhealthy behaviors that she's fallen into and that codependency have resulted in this persona that we are met with when we're watching the film.
Oh, definitely. Mom is so complex. In the second one, mom refers to Carrie as a cancer. He gave me the cancer. So mom didn't even know she was pregnant. So the lack, again, we go into the lack of sex education. She didn't know how babies were made. She didn't know she was pregnant. She thought she had cancer. Then Carrie's born. And then again, as Anna has said, all the projections mom puts on to Carrie. That Carrie's basically doomed.
Yeah.
From the beginning of the film. She's not going to stand a chance.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, like the lack of sex education. And I often say this, I've said this in a couple of casts we've been guests on before. Kids start learning about sex in 5th or 6th grade in the United States. So we are located in the United States. We're going by our standard operating procedures when it comes to the education system here of public education. I think that children should start learning about death around this age because I can guarantee while most children that are 9, 10, 11 years old probably have not become sexually active, they have known someone or something to die. So I think that that would be really beneficial. In addition to the whole, you're pre-adolescent, this and that, your body's going to change type stuff. What about like, if someone dies or, you have a pet or a farm animal or, depending on region and location that passes away, how do you feel about that? What would help you? What have you been doing? What do you want to talk about? Because that would open a lot of different opportunities for children to express themselves and find ways to heal and kind of move through the experience rather than just not talk about it or forget about it, as so many of us that grew up in the 90s were kindly told by our guidance counselors, oh, for me, it was my grandfather. I was 11. Your grandfather died. I know you're really upset, but just try not to think about him anymore. Yeah, no, no, thank you. How about like some empathy? So I think it really is something that could be built on in addition to the good jillion other things that need to be overhauled. I think that death educational would be pretty helpful.
Yes. Great point. So teachers, parents listening, if you know a student or your child, you have a death, talk about it. Include the child in rituals. That helps give them closure. That helps them understand that death happens, how they work with it. Like Anna was saying, so I'm like, well, I know you're sad. Just get over it. No, you're sad. You miss this person and they're dead. They're not coming back. So often we do a disservice to children. Oh, little Fluffy just went to the farm. No, do not say Fluffy went to the farm. Fluffy is dead. Let's bury Fluffy. Do you want to have a funeral? Should we have a service? Shall we remember Fluffy? Do these things. If grandma dies, yes, grandma is dead. If your child asks, did grandma hurt? If you know the answer, yes, grandma was in pain. She's not in pain anymore. No, she wasn't in pain. So often we avoid this. We go, oh, grandma just fell asleep. Now this child is terrified of falling asleep because you're just going to fall asleep and die someday. This is hard as adults. We weren't taught this. This wasn't modeled for us. Just like Anna said, most of us had experiences where somebody died. Maybe you went to the funeral, maybe not, because maybe you had parents that didn't want to even go there with you and do that. So then you're just like, okay, I have all these emotions and I have nowhere to put them, nobody to normalize them. If you have an adolescent, include them and help them see where they still have control. Death throws adolescents out of control, which Carrie is modeling for us, just the experience of being an adolescent. There's no control. So look at Carrie taking back her control. No, mama, I'm going to the dance. He's a nice boy. You would like him. Or even, I think one of my favorite parts is when Carrie's mom's like, your dirty pillows are showing.
Yeah.
Carrie's like, they're breasts, mom. Everybody has breasts. It's like, no, you don't get to shame me anymore. I have control over my body, and these are my breasts. And if I want to wear a dress that shows my breasts, which her dress, both dresses in both movies were beautiful. Carrie makes them the dress very tailored for herself. It wasn't like her boobs are falling out, or we got like a J-Lo dress where,
and even if
leave a lot.
That would have been okay too. Yeah, it's just the dirty pillows thing though. Like every time I hear that, I always think about one of my grandmothers would like refer to boobs as dirty pillows as well, and she would always be like, remember, nobody likes used goods. To this day, I can still hear her saying that in the back of my mind. Which she was trying to tell me to respect my body, which I, in hindsight, I really appreciate. But, as an adolescent, I found it very humorous. And then, I told some of my close friends, and our big joke was dirty pillows, like all through high school. But it's just funny every time I see the movie and hear that, I just start laughing because think about nobody likes used goods. Don't show off your dirty pillows too much,
Yes.
Yeah, it was great.
The sexualization of women, like right there, our breasts are functional. They are to nurse babies, and yet here it is. Nobody wants used goods. But what if you had more than one kid? Then the second kid has used goods because the first kid used.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think too, for me, it was more of like, why buy the cow if you give away the milk for free type of speech I was getting, which I appreciate. It was more of like, respect yourself. Don't just, do it to do it. Yeah, that kind of stuff. But, speaking of like Carrie's gorgeous dress that she creates, she also creates something else at the prom, which we could probably call chaos.
Yes. And I was even thinking, as you were talking about like being protected, like not like selling the cow, and
Mm-hmm.
how your grandma was trying to protect you, especially in Brian De Palma's version. So Brian De Palma did the first Carrie.
Yeah.
Michelle Peirce, a woman, did the second Carrie. And I think
Mm-hmm.
if you watch both, you can see the difference between the male and female perspective of Stephen King's work. The first one has this over sexualization of women and the message that as women, we get our needs met by being sexual with men.
Mm-hmm.
When Chrissy, not the bully, I'm trying to remember her name, she wants to ruin Carrie's life. In
Yeah.
the first movie, she gives a blowjob to John Travolta to get him to do what she wants him to do. So
Mm-hmm.
then here's this message as a woman: if I need a man to do something for me, if I perform a sexual favor, I will do that. In contrast, we have Tommy, sweet, sweet Tommy, who actually seems like he's the only empathetic person. He wants
Mm-hmm.
Carrie to have fun. He doesn't want to
Yeah.
have sex with her. He really just wants to help her feel good as a woman. Like even
Mm-hmm.
when he kisses her, it feels like you're a woman and I want you to feel good
Mm-hmm.
in your sexuality,
Yeah.
not I want you to feel your sexuality as how a male views your
Yeah.
sexuality. I really feel Michelle Peirce did that a bit better than
Mm-hmm.
Brian De Palma. And of course, he's a male. He has his experience of the
Right.
female experience, just like
Mm-hmm.
Michelle Peirce has her experience
Oh,
as
yeah,
the female
totally.
experience.
Yeah, and I also like looking at De Palma versus Pierce, like the De Palma version, especially, like, I can't think Tommy's girlfriend's name, the one that's like
Sue.
thinking Sue. Yeah. So she advocates for Carrie or whatever. But in the De Palma version, I immediately get that, like, you're doing this so you feel better. You're not
Mm-hmm.
doing this for her type of vibe.
Yes.
Whereas the Pierce, I'm like, okay, maybe she is a little bit more empathetic. I'm thinking about, well, what if that would have been me in the shower? You know what I mean? But I think
Yes, because the
it's like,
teacher says that. Like,
yeah.
how would you feel if you were carried? And feels like in the
Mm-hmm.
Pierce version, Sue really is like, how would I feel? Okay,
Yeah.
Carrie, I'm gonna have my boyfriend
Mm-hmm.
take you. And even there, it feels manipulative. Both versions, right?
Yeah.
Both Sues
Oh,
are
totally.
manipulating Tommy. Well, if you want to
Mm-hmm.
make me happy, if you da 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 da, you'll do this. I agree
Mm-hmm.
with Anna in the Pierce version. It feels more like Sue talks to Tommy, like, come on, like, let's feel
Mm-hmm.
like Carrie, she's like, this isn't cool. And he gets it. Where
Yeah.
in the first one, you're right. This dude's like, I need to feel better. So is my
Yeah.
boyfriend, Tommy. If you want to be
Mm-hmm.
my boyfriend,
Yeah.
you
And
will
it's
do
just,
this.
it's like, it's a really good way to show, like, um, where intent actually is, because how many times are people going through an experience about loss or grief or just emotional upheaval, and someone like isn't there for you, isn't around, and you need that person, right? So it's the whole like, I figured I was the last person you'd want to hear from right now. And then the griever's like, you're the only person I wanted to hear from, and you couldn't reach out to me. So then they like bring them a fruit basket or whatever. It's really, in a way, maybe it's because they do feel bad, but they're trying to make themselves feel better as well.
Yeah.
And it really becomes kind of a murky gray area, because you still have this person who's grieving or going through a loss or a change that's trying to navigate this. And it's like, okay, do they really need to kind of correspond or experience this with the other person who's somewhat sincere, but also just like has a super guilty conscience? And I just think it's really interesting that when you dive a little deeper with Sue's character, like, you really see that in her. Because they're not going to be besties. Like, even if the prom would have gone super well, at graduation, she's not going to sit by her. She's not going to invite her over to like her family picnic. Like, this, that maybe she's a little sincere, but like, you also get the sense that like, they're not going to be pals.
It's to ease herself, like you
Yeah.
said. Sue's doing this to feel better about Sue, to feel like I did a good thing. I helped
Mm-hmm.
somebody, even if it is, how would I feel if I'm in Carrie's shoes? It's
Mm-hmm.
still about Sue feeling good.
Yeah.
And the price Sue pays for that. Like, in
Mm-hmm.
the end, Sue loses. In Brian and Palma's version, she loses
Yeah.
everybody. In Peirce's version, if you haven't watched it, you might want to pause now.
Mm-hmm.
She loses all her friends and she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
she paid a price to feel
Yeah.
okay about herself, and how she kind of confronts the bully,
Mm-hmm.
but there wasn't this like, what the fuck are you doing? This is not
Right.
okay. And that touches on adolescence, our need to be accepted.
Yeah.
So often we won't tell people that are doing the
Mm-hmm.
wrong thing, hey, you're doing the wrong thing. I think
Yeah.
sadly most of us have had bully experiences
Mm-hmm.
or have had friends that were bullies, where it was either you confront the person or you're kicked out of
Yeah.
the friend group. So you don't
Mm-hmm.
have friends anymore.
Yeah. And it's hard too, because I think when you're an adolescent, like you think that the social structure and its repercussions are like your main concern, but you know,
Forever.
all and you go to college, you get a job, you experience life, all of these different things that come with it. You look back and you're like, that does not amount to like a pound of cookies in a freaking wooden barrel. Like
Yes.
it does not. And it's really hard to see that when you're young because that's what you're concerned with. And I think it's interesting too because in the Pierce version, um, I thought, oh wow, okay, Sue's pregnant. She's gonna be alone with this child. Isn't that kind of an interesting nod to Carrie and her mother? Like,
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
although like the original, the De Palma, that's one of my favorite jump scares ever. I love that in the end when she like takes the flowers. Once again, you don't know if she's trying to make herself feel better or, show some respect at the cemetery. And then Carrie's like, I'm taking you with me. I love it.
I saw that as a touch of trauma, right? When
Yeah.
Carrie's hands comes out and grabs Sue, it's that you can't escape the trauma.
Hmm.
You're going to have to work through this. What happened to you? What happened to your friends? And how do you work through
Yeah.
that? Because that was so traumatic. And so now
Mhm.
Sue has this trauma and trying to ease Carrie's trauma.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
just, and like the pig's blood thing, I think so many people think that that's like the most epic part of the film. Which it does incite Carrie, and that's when her powers really grow and she releases her rage and everything. But the one thing I don't understand is like, once again, we're thanatologists. We look at the biological and physiological perspective of things scientifically as well. If you've ever been near blood that's sitting, it's odorous. Like, how, to me, it's like, how does anyone not notice that? Because, like, you would smell it. Um, Especially because it's like, to me, I always get the impression that it's like a day or so old. So it's not like it's fresh. It's been sitting around for a while. And I'm like, to me, that just never made sense. I know that's like nitpicky, but and then I feel really bad because like if it does go on Carrie, right? It smells horrifying. It's probably semi-coagulated at that point. It's it is not anything that I would want to be poured on me or really anyone else. It's just a terrible experience to think about.
I agree with you. And then the hatred. That is what I have been thinking about. This bully. And I
Mhm.
was like, what is it about Carrie that
Yeah.
she hates so much? And the only thing I could come up with is that she has been sexualized as a female. She has
Mhm.
given in both films her sexuality to her partner. She has
Yeah.
learned to manipulate men, not in a bad way. As a woman, we are taught we get our needs met by meeting the sexual needs of men. This has got
Yeah.
historical, generational trauma for many women, this is how we've been conditioned. So I feel like the bully is
Mhm.
so angry because Carrie is still pure.
Yeah.
Carrie had not been tainted by a
Mhm.
society
Yeah.
in this like over sexualization. And that's what I thought. Like she hates Carrie so much because Carrie
Mhm.
has what she wants:
Yeah.
innocence, purity, not to have given
Mhm.
herself away because somebody wanted it, demanded it, or she thought that was the only way she could
Mhm.
get her needs met. Because at first I didn't have a lot of empathy for the bully. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
you're so mean. And I was like, why do you hate Carrie so
Mhm.
much? Like she think,
Yeah.
especially in the first one, she's like, I want Carrie to pay. I want Carrie to die.
Mhm.
Like she drives that car, John Travolta's car, at Carrie with the intent
Yeah.
to hit her.
Oh yeah. Like she's like a mad dog. Like I mean
Mm-hmm.
she really is. And the only other thing to add to that for me is the things that we really feel enraged about that are characteristics of others are usually, if we take a deep look at ourselves, what we dislike about ourselves. And I always found that very interesting because they seem like they have nothing in common. Um, so the commonality of what they might have could very much be, you know, something that we don't even see until we really are more introspective. And like we've all been bullied, and in hindsight, like I remember specifically in middle school, primarily for me, I developed early, and um, one of my classmates would always, you know who you are if you're listening to, um, they would always say, like, why are you wearing tight clothes? Why do your clothes fit you so tight? And, you know, to add kind of that to that, when I was like 12 or 13, I gained a fair amount of weight as well. Like I was definitely a chubby kid.
Ooh, high five.
Yeah, it was great.
I
Awesome.
ended up being obese in
Right? And
junior
so
high, high
the
school. So then, yeah,
torment
I
is
relate to
like,
your
yeah,
torment.
you always have like that one like that picks you and just is so mean and cruel. And I remember sometimes like in gym class I would just stare at her trying to figure out why she was so mean to me. And like one day she's like, why do you keep looking at me? And I was like, oh, you know, I'm sorry. But in hindsight, like I wish like baby Anna would have been strong enough to be like, because I'm trying to figure out why you're so mean to me all the time. Like, because that was the truth, right? But I was so afraid because I knew, like, you know, the cruelty. And the irony is that I went to school, I was in the same grade as her sister. So I think that, like, it's weird because her sister was like the sweetest person in the world. And she was just so mean. And it was just a very weird thing to me. But, you know, then I really think about it, and um she had, from what I remember, I think that she had started to develop as well. So maybe she saw me with, you know, big boobs and a big butt or whatever. And that was something she hated because she was seeing that happening with herself and she didn't want to grow up, or, you know, who knows what was going on with her in her life. And I'll probably never know. Like, hey, if you're listening and you've made it this far, you know I'm talking about you. I hope your life turned out okay. Like, you know, when you're kids, you don't really have the maturity to think about things in these perspectives, but it's just really interesting because I feel like everyone who has gone through adolescence always has multiple bullies, but you have that one bully that always sticks out to you throughout the years. So I've got to ask. I had that one. What about you? Did you have one that kind of stuck with you?
Oh, yes. I knew her in elementary school, junior
Mhm.
high school. For a while, she picked more on one of my closest friends. And so we kind of had each other as a buffer. Like she would target
Mhm.
one or the other of us. And she was just so mean. She would like
Mhm.
push us. She would always say mean things to us. And we grew up with her. And so we kept almost like we were in this abusive relationship with her because she was a friend. We'd go to her house, we'd go to sleepovers.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I would then side with her to protect myself. So she was in bully mode. I would kind of be like the
Mm-hmm.
person there that was like, yeah, yeah, because then
Yeah.
she wasn't picking on me. So anybody who I co-bullied with the bully, I apologize. If you're listening and you had a co-bully, maybe this gives you some perspective that if somebody else wasn't around, I was the one that was going to be bullied. So this definitely was self-protective. I also did not come from the best childhood. I had alcoholic parents. I had emotionally and physically abusive dad. My mom was neglectful. So, right, I took what I could get. So I often put up with the bully because I was getting attention. Till finally one day, I will never forget this. I am carrying a big bulletin board home. I live in Colorado. It was a snowy day. And the bully thought it would be hilarious if she buried my big poster board in the snow.
Oh,
I
no.
was taking it home to work on a project. I lost my mind. I flipped out. I was seething. I don't advocate doing this. I remember I ran up behind her and I grabbed her hair and I yanked her head back. And I'm just holding on. I don't know what to do at this point. I have her hair. She's trying to kick me. She's trying to get at me. Finally, she kicks me and I let go. And that is the last interaction I ever had with my bully. We did not talk from then. I
Mm-hmm.
lost friends. My buddy, though, we're still friends to this day. So she's listening. Hello, I'm so glad we're still friends. We made it this far. But yes, just the bullies. And I
Mm-hmm.
basically, in high school, I think Anna and I have talked about this before. I was a weird kid. I didn't have a lot of friends. So I was bullied. The popular kids picked on me. I was obese. So then I got picked on for that. Nobody liked me. And then I was the fat friend. So if I went out with friends, oh, you brought your fat friend. Why'd you bring your fat friend for my friend? Sort of thing. So a lot of, oh my gosh, so much self-esteem damage.
Yeah.
So adolescents, if you're listening, oh my gosh, there's
It
so
is
much hope for you.
pretty.
Don't let those people's voice become your voice because you're beautiful, you're magnificent, and you get to grow up and be whoever you want, and that can change as many times as you want. You don't have to be who the bullies think you are, the fat loser that nobody likes.
And it is like adolescence, especially like with, I would say, anyone who identifies more as feminine facing, it is psychological warfare. Like Margaret and I have been through it. We know, like, we're here, we've made it. Even if you're masculine facing and someone is bullying you and not being nice to you, like, there are so many grown-ups out there who have gone through something similar. Like, we've made it. There are people that you can talk to, people who are safe. You know, it sucks that people have to be that mean to each other. And hopefully one day we will see a world where people are much more empathetic and sympathetic and caring and understanding towards one another. But just so you know, like, we've made it. We're still here. Like, we get it. It sucks. But like Margaret said, you're not this person these bullies are telling you you are. You're your own person. Like, think about your favorite thing to do and how much you love it. I bet you're super talented at it too. Like, and nobody can take that away from you. So don't forget the awesome, great, wonderful things about yourself. And honestly, like, I know from my experience through most of my adolescence, like probably after my grandfather died until I graduated high school, I was pretty, I I guess depressed, but I would say like a lot of that was grief induced because my grandfather and I were really close. But I was just like so sad. And then I would become very defensive. I'm sorry to anyone that I was not nice to during that time
Yes, we
because I was
apologize.
just like so sad. And um, you know, in hindsight, I should have like thought about the cool stuff that he taught me and you know the things that he always praised about me and been like, yeah, you know what, I'm pretty good at that. Like maybe I can teach these other kids how to do it, or maybe they like it too. And you know, so there are a lot of ways that you can connect with other people and like honor the memory of someone or something that you've lost too. And that can be very helpful. If it's not for you, that's okay. But if it is for you, like give it a whirl, see how it goes.
And as Anna's saying, like, when we grieve, we are in so much pain that sometimes we do. I think of us as porcupines when we're grieving, and sometimes we're cute and we are soft, but we've got these quills. And so if we're feeling unsafe, if we're feeling hurt, we shoot these quills. And so maybe our bullies also are these little porcupines, and they're just shooting their quills more than us because we don't know the pain we're going through. And I apologize for, again, the people I co-bullied, and realizing hindsight, wow, I was in a lot of pain and I did not know how to process that. And I'm guessing the bully was in a lot of pain. I don't know. So then remind yourself you can go back and repair. I'm really sorry. My grief took over. My depression took over. I didn't mean to say those things. I didn't mean to hurt you. That can also be so powerful. I'm guessing Anna has had this experience, as well as some of the listeners, where with Facebook, internet, every now and then somebody reaches out and they're like, I'm really sorry for what happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, wait, what happened? Oh, I didn't even, that didn't faze me. I was not upset. Thank you for your apology. And other times I'm like, wow, thank you. That really feels good. And so hopefully people that listen to me and Anna, when we apologize, yes, we are apologizing because we now have that introspection that, hey, I hurt you and that wasn't my intent, or maybe I didn't realize I hurt you, and that still wasn't my intent.
And you know, if we mention you on the opposite end of that, like, yo, you don't owe us an apology, you don't owe us anything. The fact
we
that
got our power back. We got our power. We don't need them to apologize. We're like, you go do
the great thing is, like, we went through those experiences, we're still here, and we can use that knowledge to help other people. So like, I'm not saying thank you if you bullied me or you were not great to me, because I mean, it probably wasn't super fun, but you know what? Like, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And if talking about these experiences throughout our podcast helps at least one other person, like, yo, like, I'm good with that. So thank you. In a way, thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. You've helped create who I am. You've helped build our empathy. Our bullies have definitely helped give us perspective and empathy. So thank you. And if you're not there yet with your bully, if you're still super angry, like Carrie's rage, that's part of the process. We don't get to forgiveness and acceptance without. So if we look at Kubler-Ross, right? The way we work through grief, depression, anger, bargaining, before we get to acceptance, we have to be angry. It's just part of the process. So let that anger speak for what needs weren't getting met. You still aren't getting met. How you've been violated, harmed. Because remember, anger is just letting us know that something's wrong with us. We are being violated. We are being harmed. We are being threatened. Our needs aren't being met or taken from us. So don't shame your anger.
Nope.
Like, Carrie honors that. Like, yes, that rage.
And if you have to denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, if you have to a couple times, do it. Like, it comes, it ebbs and flows. It's like Margaret said, it's not always in order. But if you're doing it in a healthy way that works for you, go for it. If you're doing it in a not healthy way that does not work for you, there are supports out there available. There are a ton of teen hotlines. There are suicide and mental health hotlines that you can reach out to. They're totally anonymous. You do not have to worry about it being reported to your parents in most cases as well. There are a lot of supports out there. You don't have to feel like you have to go to a teacher or the school guidance counselor. You can contact these hotlines or these chats for help as well. You know, so that's something to kind of keep in mind also.
HR, if you're an adult, because there are workplace situations where people are bullied. My rule of thumb is, as long as you're not hurting yourself or others, your anger gets to be processed, as long as it's not creating harm, detrimental harm.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, you know, anger is kind of really important, because I think that segues us back to Carrie and something that I think is really interesting about Stephen King in general. So for me, anger is sometimes a huge reaction to trauma, right? Like, I'm mad at myself. It's my fault that this happened to me. How many of us have been through something traumatic and experienced that? You know, honestly, for me, I still feel guilt for things that I logically know were out of my control to this day. But it's something that I think a lot of people work throughout their entire lives. It doesn't just, disappear when you realize that you're okay with the situation. But when we look at trauma, I think it's really interesting that having a traumatic experience is imperative to shining. And if any of you love Stephen King, once again, trope and spoiler alert, of course, the film The Shining. But did you realize that all the kids that are friends with Pennywise and it, they shine? And look at their life experiences, right? When they're kids. So, for me, I shine all the time, man. Um, but I think it's really interesting in all seriousness that the way it's presented, just the word shining, when you think about a shining star in the night sky, something that twinkles and illuminates and is noticeable, and its beauty is what speaks to others. Sometimes our trauma and how we successfully work through it gives us that beauty and that ability to provide a guiding light for others. And Margaret, I have to ask you, I've really been thinking about this. Do you think that Carrie has the shining?
Oh, definitely. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. I don't know. Maybe Sue a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy maybe a little bit. Maybe that's something else the bully is jealous of, is that there is this, right? That Carrie has the shining, and like Anna touched on, the shining comes with trauma, right? That this is, you develop this superpower essentially to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people often miss that. And oh my gosh, I could talk forever about The Shining and just, oh, that's juicy.
We're going to have to do an entire Stephen King dedication episode or two. And if you're listening, we love you. Just so you know, Stephen King, love you. Awesome. Super awesome. Thank you for all that you do. And if you ever want to come on, you're welcome to. But in all seriousness, I mean, so many things that we see, like adolescence, fitting in, all these different themes. I mean, they really present themselves nicely in several of his works. And I think Carrie is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes, agreed. So we're coming up on the hour. Anna, who are you most like in this movie?
Well, I think, surprise, surprise, in the most modern version, Miss Desjardins. I see someone who is going through a hard time and I want to help. If we go back to the 70s version, I'm like that. Sometimes it blows up in my face and I lose my head. Other times, I make it through. I think for me, sometimes the prospect of helping someone and seeing whether, it comes out to play can be very stressful. I think that can be stressful for a lot of people, but definitely, I'm a fan of the underdog. So I think in a way, Miss Desjardins is also rooting for the underdog when she's trying to help Carrie. So I definitely identify with her. How about you?
Yes. Ooh. I'm going to have to go with Tommy. I just feel like I'm kind of like, hey, yeah, maybe I don't make the best decisions because I'm trying to go along with my friends. But at the core of it, I'm empathetic. I want to help people. I want to help people feel good about themselves, and maybe a little too naive, especially as an adolescent. I was naive, so I wouldn't question people's motives. I just be like, okay, yeah, Carrie's down, and let me see how I can help Carrie. And then it's detrimental to me that I'm not fully aware of the dangers that lie ahead, because I'm just like a little puppy, like, okay, yeah, let's see what happens. So yeah,
totally.
yes. So listeners, hope you're taking a moment to look at who you most identify. And there's no right or wrong. And this could change. Like maybe in a year from now, Anna and I revisit it. And whatever's going on in our life, we're like, no, I'm mom. No, I'm Carrie. No, I'm the principal.
Yeah.
I'm the bully. Because we are all the characters in the movie. It's just who we most relate to.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think it's going to be interesting because Carrie is a great mommy issue. We've got several other parent-child relationships and things to discuss throughout horror films that we've selected. So definitely hope you guys tune in for some more. We are going to have some more mommy issues, so stay tuned for our next podcast. It's a little bit different. We're going to be talking a little bit about gaming and film, so stay tuned.
See you next time.